Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping straight into a story out of Chicago today. It's making some serious waves.
Yeah, it touches on a lot: crime, justice, power, and this really complex question of redemption.
Exactly. We're focusing on a really significant development involving, well, one of Chicago's most notorious figures, Larry Hoover.
Mm-hmm. We've been looking through reports, Chicago Sun-Times, ABC7, BBC2, all covering the same thing: President Trump commuting Hoover's federal sentence.
So our mission in this deep dive, like always, is to get past just the headlines. We want to pull out the key facts from these sources, look at the, well, very different angles they present.
And help you understand what's actually going on here, what the real implications are.
Right. And the absolute core thing, right up front from all the sources,
Is that while President Trump did commute Hoover's federal life sentences, he's, well, absolutely not a free man. Not at all.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start with who Larry Hoover actually is, according to these reports.
Yeah.
He's painted as this, foundational figure in Chicago's gang history.
Co-founder of the Gangster Disciples, way back, late 1960s, with David Barksdale.
King Larry and King David, they were called.
Yeah, and the striking thing the reporting emphasizes is that even after he was first convicted and locked up, he apparently didn't stop.
Kept running the gang.
Yeah.
From inside.
That's what the sources say, yeah. Prosecutors allege that, by the early 90s, under his direction from prison, the gang was pulling in something like $100 million a year.
Wow. Just from drug sales.
Primarily, yes. That was the estimate.
$100 million a year. I mean, that scale, especially managed from inside prison, it's frankly hard to get your head around.
It really is. And the sources note he was apparently very careful on phone calls, which led authorities to get creative.
How so?
Well, in 1993, they started using transmitters hidden in visitor badges to monitor conversations when gang leaders came for face-to-face visits.
Okay, hidden mics in the visitor badges. That's quite something.
That surveillance, that 93 operation, that's key. It led directly to his federal charges. But even before that, you have his original state conviction.
Right, let's talk about that first. December 1973, convicted for ordering a murder.
William Pookie Young. The sources say Young was suspected of stealing from drug houses. Shot 6 times, body found in an alley, February 73.
And the sentence for that state murder conviction?
A big one. 150 to 200 years in state prison.
And the sources are really clear on this point, right? That sentence is still active. It hasn't been touched.
Exactly. Still stands. That hasn't changed at all. So then comes the second conviction, the federal one that's, the focus of this news.
Stemming from that 1993 surveillance.
Right. Charged with 40 federal crimes. The big one being engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise from prison.
And just so you understand, that charge, continuing criminal enterprise, based on the context here, it basically means being accused of leading a major ongoing criminal operation while you're already incarcerated.
Correct. A federal jury found him guilty, all charges. May 9, 1997.
Then came the sentencing in 98.
Yep. U.S. District Judge Harry Lyman Weber gave him 6 life sentences. Federal ones.
6 life sentences.
And Judge Lyman Weber is quoted in the sources saying Hoover had misused a gift from God. Those are the sentences President Trump just commuted.
Okay, so that brings us to the news itself. President Donald Trump commutes those 6 federal life sentences. This happened Wednesday, May 28, 2025.
And the reporting says Trump ordered him released immediately from federal custody. But it seems this was part of a larger pattern that day.
Yeah, one article called it a spree of clemency actions. What else was reported?
Well, the sources mentioned pardons or commutations for several others. Former Congressman Michael Grimm, former Connecticut Governor John Rowland.
Rapper Kentrell Gaulden, NBA YoungBoy.
Him too. Also Kevin Eric Baisden, convicted of fraud. Army Officer Mark Bashaw. Tanner Mansell, John Moore.
And those reality TV stars, Todd and Julie Chrisley.
Right. And Trump also apparently said he'd take a look at pardoning the men charged in that Michigan governor kidnap plot. So a busy day for clemency.
Okay, but back to Hoover. The sources raised the question of potential influences on Trump's decision here.
Yeah, it's not stated as like the direct cause and effect, but a 2018 Oval Office meeting is mentioned between Kanye West and President Trump.
Right, I remember seeing reports about that meeting. Kanye West was there with Hoover's lawyer, Justin Moore.
And West reportedly pushed Trump to commute the sentence, called Hoover a living statue, an example of someone turning his life around.
And the reporting includes this interesting detail about Trump's initial reaction. Apparently didn't seem to know who Hoover was.
Asking something like, "What did you do, Larry? What happened?" That's how it was reported.
Huh. Well, regardless of that meeting, Hoover's team has definitely been pushing for release.
For sure. The sources note they were specifically using the First Step Act to challenge the federal sentence.
That's the criminal justice reform law Trump signed back in 2018.
Exactly. And part of that law allows certain inmates, if they meet criteria like participating in programs, to petition for reduced sentences. So that was their legal angle.
Okay, so the federal sentence is commuted. But now we get to the absolutely crucial part. The sources really hammer home what this doesn't mean.
Yes. And number one, top of the list, it does not mean Larry Hoover is free.
That's the key takeaway for you listening. Despite Trump's action on the federal side, he still faces that original state murder sentence.
The 150 to 200 years. And critically, a U.S. president just doesn't have the authority to commute state sentences. Only federal ones.
So where was he as of Wednesday when this news broke?
Still locked up. In the federal Supermax prison out in Colorado, ADX Florence.
Right, the place known for holding figures like Ted Kaczynski, Terry Nichols, El Chapo.
Yeah, so he was still there. And get this, according to state prison officials quoted in the reports.
What?
It's not even guaranteed he'll be moved to an Illinois state prison anytime soon. Apparently, back in 2020, the Federal Bureau of Prisons agreed they could keep housing him for his state sentence if needed.
So even with the federal sentence gone, he might physically stay in federal custody to serve the state time?
It seems possible, based on that reporting. So his immediate location might not even change.
Okay, so the federal path is cleared. What happens next, according to the sources?
It all shifts to the state level now. Hoover's lawyers, like Justin Moore, his supporters, they're now focusing pressure on Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker.
Trying to get him to commute the state murder sentence, too.
Exactly. Follow the federal lead, essentially. You see quotes from Justin Moore like, the federal government has done its part, now it's time for the state of Illinois to finish the job.
He also said something like, we got Larry Hoover out of federal prison when many said it was impossible. Illinois must send him home for good. Pretty strong words.
Very direct. And Larry Hoover Jr., his son, has also been vocal, quoted saying things like, almost home.
Arguing his father deserves redemption, a second chance.
Yeah, believes he can be a benefit to this community. And he reportedly expressed faith that Governor Pritzker believes in rehabilitation, redemption, and transformation.
And the process in Illinois for this.
He has to petition the state's prisoner review board. That's the formal path for clemency.
But it's worth remembering the sources also mention state prison officials called him a unique security challenge just a few years ago.
Right, which highlights the complexity here, and it leads us straight into the core tension that runs through all these sources.
Yeah.
These deeply conflicting views on Hoover himself.
Okay, let's break those down. On one side, you have the argument for mercy, for rehabilitation.
Supporters, the sources say, point to things like political organizing efforts, food drives, school supply drives, trying to bring structure, although the reports often tie these back to the gang's influence and violence, too.
And Hoover himself claimed, back in the 90s, that he'd turned the Gangster Disciples into something else, right? Growth and development. A community service group.
That was his claim, yes. And more recently, there's a 2022 letter he wrote to a court.
What did it say?
Explicitly renouncing the Gangster Disciples. Quoted as writing, I am no longer a member, leader, or even an elder statesman. I want nothing to do with it now and forever.
Then there's Wallace Gator Bradley, described as a former gang enforcer, now an advocate for Hoover.
Bradley claims he spoke to Hoover on speakerphone in 2014, and Hoover was supposedly telling people to stop the violence. He commended Trump's action, said it should have happened sooner, under Biden or Obama.
And Hoover's lawyer, Justin Moore, also emphasizes the time spent in solitary nearly 3 decades.
Arguing he emerged with clarity, humility, and a commitment to peace and transformation. That's the narrative from his supporters.
Okay, but then there's the other side, a very strong counter-argument in these sources.
Definitely. Focused on his past, the harm caused, and lingering concerns. You have Ron Safer, the former federal prosecutor who led the 97 case.
What's his take?
He's quoted expressing, disbelief, doesn't understand why Hoover is worthy of this result.
He made a pretty stark comparison too, didn't he?
Called Hoover a more notorious or prolific criminal than Al Capone in Illinois history. Said his gang was responsible for countless murders, his organization broader and deeper than any the state has known. It is. And Safer also offered this perspective, quoted saying something like, he believes in mercy and redemption, but there are some crimes that are so notorious, so heinous, so pervasive, that they are not capable of mercy. And he feels Hoover's crimes fit that description. added chillingly, if Larry Hoover said there was going to be a killing, there was a killing.
Wow. And countering those claims of renunciation.
The sources report that authorities alleged, as recently as 2021, that Hoover was still involved, promoting Gangster Disciples, members from prison, suggesting he's still effectively the leader.
So a very different picture from his own statement.
Completely. And the severity of the past keeps coming up, like a judge in 2024 reportedly asking his lawyers, how many murders is he responsible for?
There's also a quote from a former CPD sergeant, Robert Angon, knew Hoover way back before the 73 conviction.
Yeah, Angon found him always respectful personally, but knew how dangerous he was. Said Hoover had a bigger army than any gang leader in Chicago history, ruling with an iron gun, overseeing massive drug and weapons operations.
And Safer, the prosecutor, ultimately called Trump's clemency an injustice.
Right. That's the word he used.
Okay, so let's try to pull this all together based on what the sources are telling us. President Trump commutes Larry Hoover's federal sentences. Big move.
Met with celebration from supporters. They're pointing to decades locked up, claiming rehabilitation, arguing for mercy.
But also met with sharp criticism from people focused on, well, his incredibly violent history, the vast damage his organization caused, and these ongoing concerns about his influence.
And the absolute number one takeaway, the thing you need to remember from all these reports, that state murder sentence, the 150, 200 years, it's still there, untouched.
Meaning his freedom is absolutely not guaranteed. The decision now basically shifts to Illinois. Governor Pritzker, the Prisoner Review Board.
The ball is firmly in the state's court now.
And what these sources really lay bare is this fundamental tension, isn't it? This figure some see as genuinely changed after nearly half a century inside, maybe deserving a chance?
Versus the view of him as, an unrepentant architect of immense suffering, someone too dangerous to ever release.
It really forces you to think, and maybe this is the final thought to leave you with, something these sources surface but don't resolve.
In cases like this, with incredibly long sentences for truly heinous, large-scale crimes, how do we as a society actually balance that? How do you weigh the possibility of rehabilitation, these calls for mercy, against the sheer weight of the past, the victims, and those real fears about ongoing danger or influence?
It's a tough question, and this commutation just brought it right back into the spotlight.